Let's improve the structure of the header by creating more components that are going to represent individual lists in the footer as well as individual list items of those lists. As you can see, component which stores markup of the lists is called app_footer_links. So I'm gonna open up this component, and the first thing that I'm going to do is to extract markup of the individual list item into its own component that I'm gonna call app_footer_list_item. Let's create new file for this component and paste the markup of the list item. And just because we're going to pass the text of every list item from outside, I'm going to use slot component in here, which will let us specify the text for list items in between opening and closing component text, like this. Let's reuse this app_footer_list_item component couple more times to render all list items of the first list. And because every list also contains heading, we can move markup of the heading into its own component as well. So right here, let's use app_footer_list_heading component. Create new file for this component. As always, add template tag and paste markup of this component. I'm also gonna use standard slot component to be able to pass the text for this component from outside. Alright, as you can see, the first list is shown properly. Now we are ready to fully extract markup of the first list into its own component. I'm gonna call a new component app_footer_list. Let's move the markup of this list into the new file app_footer_list right here. And since this list component is going to be reused at a minimum 2 more times, we'll have to supply a text for this component from outside by using props. So I'm going to declare props for this component. There will be only one prop called list, which will be an object with 2 fields, heading and items. The heading will be used to pass the text of the heading for the list, and the items will be used to pass the text for every list item into this component. So from that place where we're using app_footer_list component, let's pass list prop that is supposed to be an object with heading and items attributes, and let's supply proper values for those fields. I'm going to use heading text right here, and then let's also extract proper text for every list item and put it into items array. Now inside app_footer_list component, we are ready to interpolate the heading text on this place by simply referencing heading property like so. And we're gonna use v4 directive to render app_footer_list_item in the loop several times. So we're gonna render this component as many times as many items will be present inside the items array. We're going to use item text as a key since every item text will be unique. And we're also going to pass this item text further into app_footer_list_item component inside the standard slot. In the browser, we're still seeing that the first list is shown properly. Now we're going to render the other lists by using this new component. We're going to use kind of data-driven approach and extract all necessary data into a separate variable that I'm going to make an array of lists. So right here, every element of this array will represent the data needed to render individual list. We already have the data for the first list, so I'm gonna copy this data and paste into the first element of this array. And now I'm basically going to do the same and fill in this array with other such objects that will represent other lists. And once this array will be fully filled, we are ready to iterate over this array in order to render every list component. So in here we're gonna use v4 directive to iterate over items within lists array. As a key, we're going to use heading property since this will be unique. And just because up-footer list expects one prop called list, we're going to pass it down further into this component. Let's take a look in the browser one final time and make sure that all list components are rendered properly. As you can see, we're still seeing 3 lists rendered on the page, and each footer list component contains other components such as heading of the list as well as individual list items. And that's pretty much it. At the end, I'm also going to rename up-footer links component on up-footer lists to better reflect what this component stores. So we are clearly saying that this component stores lists. Let's also not forget and rename all the references of this component. In our case, we have only one reference. It should be up-footer lists. Alright, cool, now the footer has become a little more structured. Link to the source code of this project will be as always in the video description.